Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You heard earlier in the week, my co-counsel introduced me. I'm Barbara Whaley, work for the Attorney General's office in Frankfurt. And as my co-counsel explained, we represent the Commonwealth in any county in the state where the local Commonwealth's attorney, for whatever reason, has a conflict of interest or for some other reason cannot represent the Commonwealth. So that's why we are here in this case, Commonwealth versus Christian Martin, representing the Commonwealth. This is the opening statement. It is an overview of what we, as representative of the Commonwealth, believe the evidence that we are going to present will be. It's a preview or an overview. The important date is November 18th, 2015 in Pembroke, Kentucky, in Christian County, a very small little community. That is where the defendant, Christian Martin, lived on South Main Street. And that is where Calvin and Pamela Phillips and Edward Danzero also lived. You will hear that Calvin and Pamela Phillips had lived a long time in Pembroke. They would have been married 34 years, you will hear, on November 20th, 2015. You will also hear that Pamela Phillips would have been 58 years old as of November 23rd, 2015. Calvin Phillips was 59 years old. And Edward Danzero was 63 years old. Ed Danzero, you'll hear, was a career musician, in particular piano, jazz piano. Had been part of a number of groups, bands, different bands in his younger years. In 2015, he was spending a lot of time in Bowling Green with his longtime girlfriend, Sarah, known as Sally Jackson. In fact, he was teaching a music class every week, I think you'll hear on Tuesday, in Bowling Green. You'll hear that Pamela Phillips was a longtime employee of the Heritage Bank in Hopkinsville. And Hopkinsville, the big city of Christian County, the county seat, of course, is a distance of 15 to 20 minutes from Pembroke. Calvin Phillips himself had been in the military, both the Air Force and the Army. He owned a shop in Hopkinsville. He was, you'll hear, kind of a collector, sort of dabbled in various endeavors. Pamela left for work every morning early to make the drive from Pembroke to Hopkinsville, where the bank was, and is still. Calvin and Pam's house was at 443 South Main. Immediately next to their house, if you're facing their house, to the left is Ed Danzero's home. Across the street directly from Ed Danzero's home is the defendant, Christian Martin's home, directly across from Ed Dan, so sort of catty-corner across the street from the Phillips. Three important words that I want to suggest to you that Christian Martin had to commit these crimes. 3 homicides, 3 murders. Calvin Phillips, Pamela Phillips, Edward Dansereau. 2 burglary, first degree, for the entering into the home of the Phillips, first to murder Calvin Phillips in the morning, and then again sometime in the immediate vicinity of 5:30 p.m. to murder Pamela Phillips and Ed Dansereau. Ed Dansereau, the person who you will hear really had no involvement in any of the background, any involvement of the defendant's motive that he had to kill Calvin Phillips. Ed Dansereau was simply a good person in the wrong place at the wrong time for the right reason, coming to help. But Christian Martin had motive, had the means, and the opportunity. Most importantly, the motive. So 3 murders, 2 burglaries, both on the same day. Arson in the burning, the incinerating of Pamela Phillips' car about 3.5 miles down the road. The burning of her car, which contained the bodies of Pam and Ed Dansereau, who had been shot in that 5:30 p.m. second entry into the Phillips home, and then bodies at some point later driven out to a location about 3.5 miles away called on Rosetown Road and incinerated in Pam Phillips' car. Arson for that, and then back in the morning when Calvin Phillips was murdered, attempted to burn Calvin Phillips' body, as you will hear. Clear evidence of t-shirt material, some paper towel material that had been set on fire next to Calvin Phillips' body, which had been thrown down into the cellar on the back porch. But when that cellar door, which is one of those at a very, very old house, one of those that you pull up a wooden cover over the cellar steps, when that cover was put back down, the fire went out. So Calvin Phillips' body did not burn, but there was evidence there of an attempt to burn. So thus the attempted arson. And then 3 separate charges for tampering with evidence, moving the bodies of all 3. So we begin with motive. Calvin Phillips was scheduled to be a key critical witness for Army prosecutors at Fort Campbell in the court-martial trial of the defendant, Christian Martin. The court-martial trial had been rescheduled a number of times. In fact, it goes back I believe, a couple of years, you'll hear, to the original bringing of the charges. Charges that actually came about in no small part because of Calvin Phillips. Christian Martin, back in 2012, 2011, was married to a woman named Joan Harmon. And she resided with him at this house on South Main in Pembroke, along with her 3 children. Subsequent to moving in there, the marriage fell apart. Joan Harmon moved out of the house with her 3 children. It was not a friendly breakup. Calvin and Pamela Phillips befriended Joan Harmon. This helped her move out, helped her move her things out of Martin's house across the street. Actually babysat for her young daughters on occasion. Actually eventually helped her relocate, helped her find a place to stay. Eventually purchased a home in Hopkinsville and rented it to her to live in. In the process of assisting her to move and so forth, there was a laptop discovered and a couple of compact discs that contained classified information relating to Christian Martin, related Army classified information. In addition, Calvin Phillips, having been military himself, recognized that these items, this laptop, these compact discs, should not be anywhere but Army possession. And he took it upon himself to assist and actually direct Ms. Harmon that needed to be turned in to the authorities, that those items needed to be turned in, and understanding that they did contain classified Army information. So he contacted the FBI, either with her or directed her to, took those items, turned them into the FBI, who in turn then proceeded to contact authorities at Fort Campbell. In addition to charges that resulted from that, the misuse of classified information, Calvin Phillips also became knowledgeable and knew and found out that there were instances of physical abuse, and there were actually photographs by the defendant against Ms. Harmon's son. He turned those photographs over, which documented injuries to the boy. That resulted in charges. Serious charges brought by the Army against the defendant. Serious charges that could end his career. That Calvin Phillips was instrumental in the beginning, if it hadn't been for him turning that information over, there may not have been any. It may never have resulted, it would never have come to light. as I said, that trial had been scheduled and then postponed and then rescheduled and then postponed. And during that process of waiting for the trial and having it postponed, Calvin Phillips and Pamela Phillips continuing to live right across the street from Christian Martin. The trial did take place. It was supposed to take place December 2nd, 2015. I think it was either the 2nd or the 4th, but in the very first few days of December, it had finally been scheduled to go to trial. Well, it didn't go to trial December. Calvin Phillips was murdered on November 18th. It did eventually go to trial in May of 2016. And the defendant was convicted of misdemeanors, much less serious charges. And in May of 2016, of course, Calvin Phillips never got to testify at the trial because he was dead. The means. The defendant had the means to commit the murders, the things necessary to carry out. Calvin was killed by multiple bullets shot into his chest and neck, 45 caliber bullets. There was a 45 caliber Glock found in a safe in the defendant's home. The safe was taken the day after the bodies were discovered on the 19th. Nobody knew about these murders until the morning of the 19th, when the burned car was discovered out on Rosetown Road with the charred remains of Pamela and Edward. And only by means of the license plate that was still laying on the ground from the car were they able to trace whose car it was. And of course they found that it was Pamela Phillips' car, and that's what led them to the Phillips home on the early afternoon or late morning of the 19th. So Calvin Phillips had laid in the cellar since the morning of the 18th, when he was shot, and then his body dumped down that cellar and attempted to set it on fire. So he had laid there from the morning of the 18th until the late morning or early afternoon of the 19th, when police finally, by means of a license plate, figured out, because there was no way anyone could identify whose bodies they had found in the burned car. You will hear the detective testify. The only reason they knew there were two bodies because there were two skulls. So the next day, when they learned about Calvin Phillips, they also learned about this court-martial that had been scheduled against Christian Martin. They obtained and executed a search warrant on Martin's house then on the 20th. And that's when they located a number of firearms, a huge amount of ammunition of all calibers. All of the guns that they found, I think a total of 7, were in various places in the house, except one. A .45 caliber Glock, semi-automatic. And that gun was in a safe. Now they didn't find it on, they found the safe and they took the safe on the 20th of November. Took it to a warehouse where evidence is stored. At a later time, a search warrant was obtained for the safe. The safe was opened, and in the safe was the .45 caliber Glock semi-automatic. The only gun in the house that was in a safe. You'll see photographs of the Phillips home, and it's a large, as I said, very old, and I think 3-story, very large, and a lot of stuff in the house. I think there was some work had been going on, particularly in the back porch area where things had been stored, closed-in porch. And in April of 2016, the police had searched and searched and searched on the 19th when they found Calvin's body for casings, for any evidence that they could use. And they didn't find any casings because they had all been picked up. The defendant, a trained military officer, well familiar with all weapons, all kinds of weapons, and knew how to cover up after firing these shots. So there were no casings when the police processed the scene, even though multiple bullets found in all 3 bodies at the autopsies. But the family members who came to clean the house, to pack up all the belongings in the days after the murders, and then came back again because there was so much. In April of 2016, Calvin Phillips' sister, who you will hear testify, located on the back porch where the cellar door that lifts up, where Calvin's body was thrown, there was a .45 caliber shell case. Now, she didn't know what it was when she saw it. She doesn't know guns. But she's in the process. You'll see the video, the surveillance video the family had put in after the murders. You'll see her in the reflection of the back door notice something over under a bunch of wood on this back porch. And she had been out there cleaning for a while and saw this thing and knew that it had something to do with a gun. Her nephew, who's the son of Calvin and Pamela, their only child, who you will hear from, Matt Phillips. He grew up and went to Christian County High School and then went on to U of L. Still lives in Louisville. He was there with her, with Diana Phillips, Cal's sister, cleaning and packing and so forth. And she called him to come and look at this thing down under a bunch of debris there. He knew what it was. Neither one of them touched it but he immediately called the police to come. And you'll hear from a detective with the Christian County Sheriff's Office who came. And you'll also see on the surveillance video when he comes and puts it into a paper bag and collects it. That's the one casing that found its way to a location that the defendant missed. He didn't collect that one. That casing then was sent to the Kentucky State Police Crime Lab in Louisville, along with the Glock 45 that had been found in the safe. And a longtime firearms examiner conducted the test on that casing with the Glock. In fact, he had worked so long for the Kentucky State Police doing firearms exam that he was close to retirement when he did this and is now retired, but you will hear from him. There is no doubt that that casing was fired in the defendant's Glock found in the safe in his home. That's the one piece of evidence that he didn't get that was left behind. Keep that in your mind, because that is the means. There's no doubt that that casing was fired from the Glock. And the bullets found in Calvin Phillips were 45. Now, there was one other piece of evidence that also was left behind. And that piece of evidence has the defendant's name on it. Dog tag. In the days following the murders, as the family was cleaning, there's a foyer in this old house, right outside the kitchen. You'll see photographs. And there's shelves in that foyer. On a shelf in the foyer, as the police processed the scene the day after, or the day they found Calvin Phillips, they found his wallet on this shelf. So they photographed that, but you'll see in the picture there was something else up there. It's a string hanging down off that shelf that you'll see. A string kind of piled up there. And when you think of a dog tag, you know, I guess maybe you think of a chain, but this was on a string. It had the tag on it with his name on it. The family also found that. It had not been picked up by the police. But it's in the photograph they took on the 19th. The family, in fact, you will hear testimony from Cal's sister that when she first grabbed it, she thought it was Calvin's, her brother's dog tag, until she looked at the name. So for whatever reason, why would you take a dog tag off? Maybe it was getting in the way to pick up all those casings or clean up the blood. It was left behind. Pamela Phillips was killed by multiple gunshots to her brain and heart with a .22 caliber firearm. Her blood, through testing, was found, droplets that were tested was found on the way from that foyer area out through the back porch. Her body was burned in her own car, found out on the road. You will hear from a witness who was on the telephone with Pamela Phillips at 5:30 p.m. on the 18th and heard her scream and never returned to the phone. Pamela Phillips at her home. The friend was so concerned that she went to the house about 6 o'clock, and the door was open, or not open, but unlocked, but couldn't get any response inside. Called out, no response, did not go in. Again, the friend was so concerned, she went back to the house about 7 o'clock p.m. The phone call, the scream was at 5:30, went to the house at 6, the door was unlocked. Went back at 7 p.m. and it was all locked up. Still no sign of Pamela Phillips, of course, because she had already been murdered. But her car had been moved. It was either pulled in front, forward facing at the 6 o'clock visit, but on the 7 o'clock visit was backed in. And her friend's daughter had been with her, was with her, you'll hear, on both of those visits. Edward Danzero was also murdered with a .22. There were at least 2 gunshots to his brain. His blood was in a pool in the backyard of the Phillips home, where he lived right next door. Not only was his blood, but a unique gun that Ed Danzero had been given by his father, you'll hear, from his girlfriend. A gun that was from, that Ed Danzero's father had gotten during World War II in Germany. And that was laying next to the blood, and that's a .32 caliber, old gun. And Ed, you'll hear, was the type of person who wanted to help. So he was at home that afternoon. You'll hear from his girlfriend. He had been in Bowling Green. He got home about 3:30 that afternoon. She actually was supposed to have gone with him because they would go back and forth between her house in Bowling Green and his house there in Pembroke. And she was supposed to have come with him, but something had come up. I think she was supposed to babysit her grandchildren, and she ended up not going. So he was there and talked to her, was talking to her sometime before this 5:30 p.m. Opportunity of Christian Martin to commit these murders. That's the timeline. The 18th of November, Pamela Phillips had gone early to work, as she did every morning. You will hear from her co-worker. In fact, her co-worker will tell you she was one of those people that's like the first one there and the last one to leave. Had worked for a number of years at the bank. That particular morning had a training to conduct at the bank. So Calvin was home alone that morning. Keep in mind, this is 2 weeks before the court-martial trial. The pressure is getting more and more each day on the defendant facing this trial. He didn't log into his computer at Fort Campbell until 9:50 a.m. The defendant's girlfriend, who lived with him at the time, remember this is years after he has split up with his wife, Joan Harmon. So there is a girlfriend now living with him at the home on South Main named Laura Spencer. There is surveillance video that you will hear about that shows the back of the Martin residence and shows Ms. Spencer leaving very early in the morning for her job. Very early, like in the 6 a.m. or maybe even 5 a.m. time frame. You will also see on the surveillance video, or see and hear, that the children of Ms. Spencer, who also lived there and had moved in, who are high school students, are shown leaving the house somewhere in the neighborhood of either between 7 and the 8 a.m. time frame. So everyone has left the Martin home, but he's not left. There's plenty of time for him to go across the street. And of course, the most convenient way to do that is out the front door, which we don't, unfortunately, have a surveillance camera for. And into the home of Calvin Phillips and commit the shooting murder of Calvin Phillips and dump his body into the cellar and use the t-shirts and other items to clean up the blood, throw it down into the cellar and try to burn it. And you couldn't tell that there was a body. The only way the police later, when they got there, late or mid-afternoon on the next day, the 19th, the only way they knew there was a body is they saw something sticking out of that wooden cover on the cellar steps. Also, there was a very ill, Calvin Phillips was a German Shepherd person who liked German Shepherds and had a German Shepherd who was very ill, had been diagnosed as very ill. When the police got to the house and they went to that back door on that porch on the early afternoon or late morning of the 19th, they saw through the window the dog laying on top of that wood cover of the cellar. Of course, his master has been killed on the steps underneath, and here's that poor dog, ill as it was, laying on top of that cover. But they saw something sticking out, and when they had to get the canine to come and take that poor dog, and then were able to lift up that cellar cover, and that's where they saw But just to walk through the house, you would not know that there was a body. So he logged into his computer at 9:50 a.m. at Fort Campbell. There had been a delivery supposed to happen at 10 a.m. of a washing machine. The delivery was not, there was no one there. The police located the information about the delivery. It was a van that came out of Nashville for, I think, for Lowe's, and the police talked to the delivery company in Nashville and got the information. They were not able to make delivery. There was no one home. The delivery was supposed to be made between 10 and noon, but Calvin Phillips was dead. At 3:32 p.m., the defendant logged off of his computer at Fort Campbell. And at 4:14 on the surveillance video, he arrived home. 4:14. Pamela Phillips leaves the bank at 5:02 p.m. And as I said, at 5:30, she is at home on the phone with her friend who hears the scream. So he has been home since 4:14. 6 p.m. is when her friend who heard the scream goes and finds the door open, no response. 7 p.m. she returns, the door is locked, the car is backed in. And an interesting piece of this timeline is that the defendant's phone was obtained, cell phone, and the forensic analysis of the phone itself shows that at 11:27 p.m. on the 18th, this is the 18th. At 11:27 p.m., the defendant set the alarm on his phone for 1:10 a.m. to ring the Top Gun ringtone for 1:10 a.m. At 2:10 a.m., the resident out on Rosetown Road, where the car was found that next morning, heard what he thought was an explosion. At 2:10 a.m., he thought that his neighbor, who had the property right next door, out there on Rosetown Road, he thought it was his neighbor burning something and that it was just some popping from the... Yes, it was something burning. But it wasn't his neighbor. It was that car of Pam's. And you'll see all the photographs of that scene out there on Rosetown Road. At 8:42 a.m., the man who lived out there drove up to where he had heard what he thought was his neighbor burning something, and that's when he found the car. He drove up the road and then called 911. That was at 8:42 a.m. the morning, and by the time they got there, I mean, it was still, I think, smoking, smoldering. But the alarm was set for 1:10 a.m. and Earl Jett heard the explosion at 2:10 a.m. 1:55 p.m. then on the 19th is when Calvin Phillips' body was found in the cellar. It's going to be a lot of evidence you'll hear, a lot of witnesses, but you know, there's only one truth. And the two things I would ask you to focus on is that both lead to this truth is motive overall, overarching all of this is this motive that no one had the motive to kill Calvin Phillips, who was going to be the critical witness in the court-martial that would end Martin's career. You'll hear testimony from friends of Calvin Phillips that he was so worried about having to do this testimony that he told his friends, if something happens to me, you tell the police to go look at Christian Martin. He told more than one person that before it happened. He was so worried. Keep in mind this, no one else had this motive. And then the two pieces of evidence left behind. The two pieces that he couldn't, you know, nobody's perfect, especially in the midst of committing criminal wrongdoing. Criminals are not perfect. The .45 casing escaped his attempt to cover everything up, and that is the linchpin. The .45 casing found right there next to that cellar door that was shot from the Glock 45 in his safe, nobody else's. His gun, his safe, and the dog tag left behind. So at the end of all this evidence that you will hear, the Commonwealth will come back before you and ask you to find the defendant guilty of these charges. Thank you all.